Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm GOVT and these are the headlines. The US says it is close to a deal with Germany on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. A State Department spokesperson says Berlin and Washington have taken steps to ensure that Russia cannot weaponize energy flows. This comes amid fears the pipeline that will run from Russia to Germany will embolden Moscow. The Taliban say they have released 80 Afghan government prisoners held in 8 provinces. In a tweet, the spokesperson said they will be releasing more detainees during the Eid days. Earlier, Russia said the Taliban are ready for a political compromise despite making territorial gains. Muslims in Pakistan and a number of other countries are celebrating Eid-AL-ADHA to mark the end of the Hajj pilgrimage, commemorating the acts of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. The day propagates the spirit of sacrifice for the will of God. Brazil has registered over 1,400 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 27,000 cases. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 40 people have died while nearly 2,600 tested positive overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.1 million lives and has infected over 191 million people. The death toll from floods in central China has risen to 12 after torrential rains drenched Henan province. The authorities say more than 100,000 people in the provincial capital, Jiangsu, have been evacuated to safe zones. Floods have affected more than a dozen cities, forcing the roads to be closed and flights cancelled. Those were the headlines in detail. Stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The US says it is close to a deal with Germany on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. A State Department spokesperson said Berlin and Washington have taken steps to ensure that Russia cannot weaponize energy flows. In a press briefing, Ned Price said Washington has consulted the matter closely with Ukraine and Poland. The spokesperson added the US views Nord Stream as a Kremlin geopolitical project. He said the pipeline is intended to expand Russia's influence over Europe's energy resources and to circumvent Ukraine. This comes amid fears that pipeline from Russia to Germany will reduce Ukraine's leverage, which remains a transit point for Russia's exports to Europe. On, the Taliban say they have released 80 Afghan government prisoners held in 8 provinces. In a tweet, the spokesperson said they will be releasing more detainees during the Eid days. The Taliban have not declared a usual ceasefire on the religious occasion, but say they are in a state of defense. Earlier, Russia said the Taliban are ready for a political compromise despite making territorial gains. The comments follow another round of inconclusive intra-Afghan talks in Qatar over the weekend. But Afghan President Ashraf Ghani said the Taliban's recent actions showed the group does not want to move forward. He said Kabul's representative Abdullah has told him the Taliban have shown no willingness for peace. As America's 20-year-long war in Afghanistan approaches its end, U.S. veterans say blood spilled in the country was wasted. Watch this report. Americans generally have different estimations about the war, but Lily and other Marines who served in Afghanistan have compared it with the conflict in Vietnam. They say both the wars had no clear objective. Jason Lilly was a U.S. Marine raider who fought multiple battles in Iraq and Afghanistan. The perspectives of Lilly and other veterans can help inform nations about the costs of entering a war. Lilly expresses love for his country, but disgust at its politicians and dismay at the blood and the money squandered.
100% we lost the war. I mean, the Taliban already taken over one of the major passes like this week and getting money from this choke point of Tajikistan. So, and we're not even out yet. Like, the Taliban will take over. It's who's going to be there to stop them, you know? Like, so the whole point was to get rid of the Taliban. We didn't do that. I mean, really make it really simple. Did we do that? No.
The Afghan conflict has claimed more than 3,500 US and allied military lives. The war also led to the killing of more than 47,000 Afghan civilians and 66,000 troops. Lilay says he grew to understand why historians have called Afghanistan the graveyard of empires.
Yeah, there was a point where I couldn't even look at the flag. I mean, it took me a few years to like really let go of like my anger and like, not want to say I felt used, but I did at the same time. Like, I knew what I was getting into. I wanted this. Like, I grew up on Rambo. I grew up on a lot of these movies, but I wanted to like honor my family in the sense, you know, my grandpa fought in World War II.
Americans generally have different estimations about the war, but Lilay and other Marines who served in Afghanistan have compared it with the conflict in Vietnam. They say both wars had no clear objective. The Pentagon says the U.S. military has carried out an airstrike against al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. This is America's first strike in the African country since President Joe Biden assumed office. In a statement, the Pentagon said the strike took place near the city of Galkayo. It said the U.S. Africa Command Forces conducted the attack in coordination with Somalia's federal government. However, it did not mention any casualties on the ground. Washington has frequently carried out airstrikes against al-Shabaab as the group seeks to topple the Somalian government. Moving on, Muslims in Pakistan and a number of other countries are celebrating Eid-AL-ADHA to mark the end of the Hajj pilgrimage. Commemorating the acts of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, the day propagates the spirit of sacrifice for the will of God. Animals, typically goats, lambs, cows or camels, are sacrificed to mark the occasion. The three-day celebrations preach the virtue of sharing and charity in society. In his message, Pakistan's President Arif Alvi said without spirit of sacrifice, a nation cannot aspire to achieve goal of development. He also urged the people to continue following the SOPs to contain the coronavirus outbreak. Alvi said the Prime Minister decided against complete lockdown, considering the livelihood of the poor segments of society. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Imran Khan said the government is providing relief to those in need through different schemes. Saudi Arabia has released 62 Pakistani prisoners on the occasion of Eid-ul-Adha. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said a special plane brought the prisoners back home. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said the funds for detainees' return were arranged on his instructions. Khan said his government is committed to helping Pakistanis in prisons abroad and assisting in their return. In 2019, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had ordered the release of over 2,000 Pakistani prisoners. Since then, hundreds involved in petty crimes have been released as a goodwill gesture. In Pakistan, the coronavirus has claimed 40 more lives over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll has reached 22,888. The ministry said nearly 2,600 people tested positive overnight. Pakistan's caseload has exceeded 996,000, while more than 922,000 people have recovered. The ministry said there are more than 51,000 active cases. It said nearly 2,600 of them are in critical condition. Brazil has registered over 1,400 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 27,000 cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.1 million lives and has infected over 191 million people. More in this report. Amid vaccine discrepancies and new variants, the World Health Organization has warned that the world is in the early stages of yet another wave of coronavirus infections. Controversies on the origins of the virus also remain, stirring up one after the other. In the U.S., Dr. Anthony Fauci has rejected a Kentucky senator's insinuation that the U.S. funded research at a Chinese lab that sparked the COVID outbreak. Meanwhile, in Australia, more than half of the 25 million population came under hard lockdowns as Delta variant spreads across the country. While South Korea also reported record overnight cases with a surge in Delta-driven outbreaks.
As of today, a total of 1,784 new cases were confirmed. This is a record high number of cases since the coronavirus outbreak. Currently, about 47% of domestic cases are of the mutated virus, and among them, 33% cases are of the Delta variant, so it might affect the outbreak.
The Europe's drug regulator has started a real-time review of the vaccine developed by French drug maker Sanofi and the UK's GlaxoSmithKline. Meanwhile, the UK reported 96 daily deaths from the virus, its highest number since March the 24th. France also says it witnessed a 150% surge in cases in a week.
I just received the figures for new infections in our country over the last 24 hours. I had spoken of the risk of reaching 15,000 to 20,000 cases per day at the end of the month of July. Yesterday, there were 18,000 new infections in only 24 hours. It means that the spread of the virus has increased by 150% over a week. We have never seen this before. Not with COVID, neither with the English variant, nor the South African, nor the Brazilian.
India has reported more than 45,000 cases of a fungal infection known as mucormycosis. Health Minister says over 4,200 of them have died, while a majority of patients had a history of COVID-19. Indonesia has extended the emergency restrictions to July the 25th as the country is still fighting the second wave of COVID-19. Tunisia's Prime Minister has sacked Health Minister amid spiraling coronavirus cases in the North African country. Moving on, Haiti's government has formally appointed Ariel Henry as the country's new prime minister. The appointment comes nearly 2 weeks after the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Henry assumed the role of Haiti's de facto leader in a ceremony in the capital, Port-au-Prince. In his first address, he called for unity and restoration of order and security in the strife-torn country. Henry urged continued international support for the Western Hemisphere's poorest nation. The 71-year-old neurosurgeon was tapped by Moïse to be the new prime minister 2 days before his murder. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has welcomed the development as a positive and a necessary step. In Nigeria, the authorities say they have secured the release of 100 kidnapped women and children in northwest Zamfara state. Police say they held negotiations with the local bandits who had held the villagers hostage for 42 days. They said the release was unconditional and no ransom was paid. The villagers were abducted on June the 8th and 4 people were also killed during the incident. Heavily armed gangs have long plagued Nigeria by looting, stealing cattle and abducting for ransom. On Monday, 13 policemen were killed in Zamfara in an ambush. A French fighter jet has crashed during a support mission in the Mopti region of Mali. In a statement, French military said the Mirage 2000 crashed in the Hombori town due to a technical problem. It said the 2 crew members ejected before the crash, while one of them is slightly injured. The military said an investigation into the cause is underway. However, it ruled out the possibility of militants' involvement. Moving on, the death toll from floods in central China has risen to 12 after torrential rains drenched Henan province. According to the weather forecasters, the rainfall is the heaviest in 1,000 years. The authorities say more than 100,000 people in the provincial capital, Changsha, have been evacuated to safe zones. Over 6,000 firefighters and some 2,000 military personnel have been deployed for rescue work. Floods have affected more than a dozen cities, forcing the roads to close and flights cancelled. Henan province issued its highest level of weather warning following the unusually active rainy season. President Xi Jinping has stressed saving people's lives as the top priority in flood prevention and rescue. Wildfires continue to rage across the western U.S. and Canada, with smoke causing cross-country air pollution. The violent flame surge comes as the two countries face a historic heat wave. In the U.S. state of Oregon, the bootleg fire has blackened over 388,000 acres. Some 2,200 personnel managed to carve containment lines around 30% of the fire's periphery. However, it expanded farther to the east and north. The blaze has so far destroyed 67 homes, while another 3,400 are listed as threatened. Meanwhile, in Canada, more than 200 properties were evacuated in British Columbia amid raging flames. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. And now the business updates. Shares in the Asia Pacific are trading mixed following an overnight bounce at the Wall Street. Australia's ASX 200 is leading the gains, rising close to 1%. Mainland Chinese shares also edged more than 0.75%. Nikkei 225 in Japan advanced more than 0.5%. Seoul's Kospi and Hong Kong's Hang Seng both shed over 0.5%. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.